Hello and welcome to the first episode of Prof's Covered. In this series we'll cover papers of professors I've taken courses with during my Ridgetown years and my undergrad years. For this episode we'll talk about Chris Gillard and his work in beans. Chris Gillard is an agronomist who obtained his master's from University of Guelph. His work is in testing out different bean cultivars, specifically dry beans, like navy beans, kidney beans, etc., etc., and the new products used on them. For this episode, we'll be talking about two papers he wrote. Let's get started. Our first paper covers the impact of seed treatments and nitrogen rates on dry beans within Ontario in regards to grain yield and plant growth. The application of nitrogen fertilizer and commercial seed treatments has been the conventional way of growing dry beans in Ontario. In order to manage root rot and maximize yields. There are 12 treatments in total within this experiment. 2 seed treatments consisting of treated versus untreated, and 6 nitrogen rates being used. 0 kilograms per hectare, 35 kilograms per hectare, 70 kilograms per hectare, 105 kilograms per hectare, 140 kilograms per hectare, and 175 kilograms per hectare. This was applied to 2 classes of bean, cranberry and navy, and the experiment was repeated for 3 years, 2008 to 2010. And here are the results. There's a great deal of variation in the response to these treatments over the 3 years, but there's been rarely any statistically significant effect from any of these treatments. The days to maturity and grain moisture were not affected in any way, shape, or form, and crop emergence was too varied to give any conclusions. In 2008, seed treatment, but not the nitrogen rate, improved grain yield in the navy bean cultivar. Based on current information, the peak yields obtained can be achieved with 120 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, so long as it's in the soil. But it can get 95% of that maximum yield by just using 63 kilograms per hectare of nitrogen, much of which may be already within the soil. But based on this information, the greatest source of increased yield is early season stand establishment. This is controlled predominantly by the environment itself. The other most common limitations seem to be nitrogen, but phosphorus, which is one of the predominant causes of root rot, due to weaker plants being more easily affected by the pathogen that causes root rot, and bronzing, which is a direct effect of phosphorus deficiency, is also predominant due to the fact that many bean farmers use manure on their fields, as did Dr. Gillard, and there's still plenty of nitrogen left in the soil after the corn crop is grown. But there still seems to be a nitrogen response in some instances, so Dr. Gillard recommended that further research should be done over the course of more years to see at what condition. Now onto the second paper by Chris Gillard. In this paper, Mr. Gillard did extensive work on trialing different cultivars in 2015, as well as testing out different cultivars for their resistance to different diseases. He will not be covering the yield trials because by this point many of the cultivars have already become outmoded, probably. Such is the nature of annual crop breeding. Conventional cultivars often have a short shelf life before they're replaced by the next latest and greatest thing. I will, however, cover the rest of the research. We'll first cover marsh spot. Marsh spot is a physiological disorder found primarily in cranberry beans, and on occasion kidney beans. This is where the center of the bean dies and turns gray and black, causing the bean to split. The cultivars were tested in Exeter, Allure, and St. Thomas research stations. They're all compared against Etna, the most resistant variety at that time, and Messina, the most susceptible cultivar at that time. All cultivars were similar to the resistant variety, with the exception of ACUG 15C1 and Vero within the Allura site. Next, there's experiments regarding how to treat anthracnose. The fungicides Algira plus Quadras, Acapella, and BAS 70320F were the fungicides that had the best effect on the disease. For white mold, Allegro, Senator, Fluoxetinol, and a high rate of Propulse are still the top tier fungicides to treat white mold. EAC 1407 A new liquid formulation of Senator worked just as well as Senator. Preaxor plus Lance and Acapella were second-rate fungicides when it came to white mold control, and the worst products were Quash and Astound Granular. As for root rot seed treatment, for Fusarium, disease pressure was moderate during the experimental time period, so no differences were observed. For the fungal species Rhizotonia, however, Sexidine plus Cruiser Max Bean was the second best fungicide seed treatment, with Evergold Energy being the top tier. For planting date, the data found that plantain, late, sometime in June, is the best within the Ontario environment. And for the final experiment, which includes plant population and row width, which ones worked the best, wide rows had a higher yield in Exeter for Richtown. In Richtown, however, there's no differences to be spotted. For small seed cultivars, there's very little change. But in both cases, when a population size was 40% of what it normally is, a yield loss occurs. A 19 to 30% yield loss occurred in Exeter and Richtown for the large seed varieties, if you're only growing 40% of what is recommended to be grown. For small seed cultivars, the yield loss was between 13 and 16%. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you really enjoyed it and think you can donate, you can do so at Buy Me a Coffee, link in the description below. Thank you for watching.